Hey everybody, it's John Smale again. This episode of Smales Pace is about moving on, and it's not it's a very emotional story. I hope it's cathartic for me. I do get asked from people, so what happened? You were going merrily along, and then what? You changed your life? What happened? Well, I was tired. I was frustrated. Uh, it wasn't like the Bill Murray movie Groundhog Day, where every day was the same. There was there was certainly adventure, and there was certainly a lack of routine. But then again, I felt like I had done what I could do, and it didn't seem to measure up to the kind of success quotient that I had placed on it. I was disappointed, struggling for money all the time. We weren't. We had a successful entertainment venue. We had a successful cafe, but neither of them were going anywhere beyond just paying the bills, and that gets kind of frustrating. I could have done something like get a liquor license, but then that would change the flavor of a listing house, as it were. Maybe it wouldn't, but I also knew that we would have to change locations to somewhere larger to accommodate the bar and storage and larger washrooms and a loungy feel and maybe an expanded kitchen and so that called up about, well, investment and money, and do I want to do this again? Because as you've heard many stories, the restaurant and entertainment business is exhausting because you're doing it all the time and the hours are long, and the returns are more emotional than they are financial. So, and then what happened too, interestingly enough, is I fell in love, and love is a many splendored thing. This lady who worked down the street at a rock and roll booking agency, and her name was Joanne Muroff at that time, and Joanne was a transpose of came from Miami Beach and via Boston and met was at a booking agent convention and was offered a job in London, Ontario, and she didn't know where it was. And Joanne came here, and along her stay here, she kept bugging me to book acts through her for Smalespace. And I said, look, Joanne, that's something that I do. I mean, I've got my contacts and my way of doing things. And I said, thanks. But eventually I did book somebody through Joanne, and the rest is history, of course. Well, next thing you know, Joanne and I are spending more and more time together, and as we grow our relationship and move in together, etc. And the more time I spent with Joanne, of course, the less time I was spending at Smales Pace and starting the separation process, I would imagine. If you look back at it psychologically, that's what I was doing, was trying to separate myself. Now, there was a shop behind Smales Pace on Queens Avenue, and it was a women's small dress boutique, clothing boutique, and it was run by Debbie. I can't remember Debbie's last name, not that it matters. And she had a wonderful mother named Ruth, and Ruth was a dynamo, and she was part of the London crusty set, and she was, I suppose part of the gentry. And some of Ruth's lady friends would slum it and come to Smalespace for lunch sometimes, and I really liked them. And I thought, they're great broads and dames, and they're fantastic. And that's what I always hoped Smalespace would be more of a melting pot of people with varying opinions and ideas and concepts and but Ruth said, John, my friend Peter Ivy of the Ivy family is opening a very upscale lodge, hotel, country inn in Ben Miller, which is outside of Goderich, and they're looking for someone for design and management. And I recommended you, and Peter wants to meet you. So I met with Peter Ivy of the famous Ivy family, owners of Canada Trust and I think Emsco Brass and a lot of other very successful investments in London and the Canadian economy. So I was accepted for that, but of course, I just couldn't move. I had to sell Smales Pace, and I had to turn a page in my book, and it was like, oh my God. This woman by the name of Diane heard Smales Pace was for sale, and she made an offer, and we concluded the deal, and Diane and her family were lovely people, and I felt very good in trusting them with the future of Smales Pace. I'm not sure how long Diane had Smales Pace. It gets a bit blurry. All these emotional things get blurry, and I feel like I've had a knock on the head with a bit of amnesia when it comes to certain parts of my life that I find painful or at least unsettling. And Diane eventually sold Smales Pace to Annie and Carl Grindstaff, and they moved the location from Clarence Street to Talbot Street and changed the name along with that to Change of Pace, which I thought was a brilliant turn of phrase, play on words, cultural change, whatever. And so that's how that part of history happened. I sold Smales Pace, started following my muse about architecture and design, and to do it I had to sort of cut off a leg so I could walk on my good leg, and in recollection I felt a great numbness. I didn't have that great sense of relief or adventure. I found it empowering in some ways, I suppose, that I was actually doing something with my inertia, but this numbness of quitting my life as I knew it, and with so many friends and people, and it was a sadness that stayed with me for a long time. It was it was invisible, but I had questions for many years, until I really truly found myself and was happy again in my new chosen life, and I've been quite happy ever since. Now, it took years, and there were emotional damages associated with that, and it led to a separation from Joanne, which is unfortunate. And thank God we've remained friends all these years, and we laugh at these stories now, thank goodness. And so that's my cathartic story of the day, expressing from my soul that it was not an easy decision. It was not an easy process. It remained unsettling to me for years, but I have only the good memories that I carry around with me now. I try to put aside that kind of stories that were troubling and trying, and why didn't you do this, and do you regret giving it up, and all those questions that get asked of me, and I'm awkward in expressing them, and I think people know that. So that's how I remember it, folks. There you go. I've just sort of now. I'm not. This is a non-sequential video blog podcast. It's not in a sequential order. Ticks some people off. Well, why don't you start at the beginning and end up at the end? Well, because it's not that kind of lateral journey, and I want to talk about things as they come up to me. And tomorrow I might be talking about the pets I've had or whatever. Who knows? But anyway, folks, I enjoyed telling this story. even though it was an emotional journey. And talk to you real soon. Bye.